Right. So, today we will be going over the different versions of Pigeon, which everyone blames as how to stretch one's piriformis. Not that isn't important, but it's like, oh, let's do Pigeon. And there's a lot of different ways to do Pigeon. Mainly make this video to demonstrate that I don't think that understanding or practicing how to do the stretch is really what the issue is with my bizarre hips, but okay. We will begin with the one that most folks are familiar with, where you are here laying on your back and you take one flexed foot into the center of the thigh here. Where most people tend to go is they'll curl the pelvis in and wrap the hands around, and actually you can kind of see that I'm so tight in the entire body that I have to curl up to do that, and they curl here. Okay, am I feeling a stretch? Well, yes, kind of. But that's because I was going to feel a stretch no matter what position we were in. I don't even really need to have done all of that if I am doing the thing correctly. So let's actually start on the floor. Here's you, theoretically, in a neutral spine, which means that the ASAS and this front edge of the pubic bone are level and flat with each other, as opposed to turned in with the lumbar or low back curve flatter but not flattened into the mat. So this would be my imprint, this would be my neutral. So beginning in neutral, still drawing my core in maybe 25% at the most, just to help support me. I assume that same position, taking the flexed ankle into the center of the thigh, but I want to leave my pelvis alone. So I'm thinking of using this outer musculature and inner musculature to press this knee out, down and away. And then I'm thinking about leaving my hips in that neutral position. So I'm already getting a stretch through here. Yay! Okay, so am I feeling the pigeon stretch here? You betcha. I didn't even do anything yet, but I'm engaging correctly. Okay, let's say we want to take it up a notch. We can do the thread around the back of the thigh, or even here. And I've got to curl me back down, so perhaps here is more appropriate for me. Now that I've curled my hips in, feeling the stretch in a different way, great. But I can also continue to feel the stretch if I think of pressing that pelvis out to neutral and still thinking about pressing that knee away. Yes? Yes. All right. Sometimes folks also do this thing with the leg raised. I can't really extend through my hamstrings, so I don't care. But all this to say, one, in my opinion, should wiggle here with their pelvis to stretch all those things in the many elastic, slight movements that they can theoretically take. All right. Let's release. Now, the pigeon that everybody likes is the fancy one, where you are here with one leg behind and one in front. So if we were perfect rubber band people, we would have the front ASAS pointing forward and down parallel, and then we'd have this front leg totally rotated so that the shin was perpendicular with the mat, and would keep those hip bones in the same position, and this hip would be smooshed flat to the mat, and so would the back of this hip. Judging by the mirror, first of all, I don't get accurate visual signals, so I think I am roughly straight and the camera is not perpendicular to me, but anyway, in this position I would be around there. This is quite an intense stretch for me, so I can't lower to the floor. In which case, if I want to bend this knee and kind of rotate it in, it's not really the end of the world, but it's not the official pigeon. The goal would be to open out with the leg as I could. Similarly, this hip can be rotated out with the goal to take the hip bones forward and down. And then if you wanted to do all the rest of the flexy stuff, you could reach up in a back bend here and then grab the foot. You may notice I did not do that and I rotated my torso because I can't do that. This is also stretching the quads and less of the hip flexor for me, although I'm still getting something because it's all connected and I'm super stiff all the time. So, same thing with this back foot. You gotta be careful because people will wing in to sort of grip like such as their leg is smushed like this to the mat, and that is not the neuromuscular signal that we want to take hold of. Anyway, in this pigeon, if you're in the fancy pigeon, or here, because the goal actually is to be with the torso here. Clearly I cannot do that with my hips smooshed to the ground. But also you can come and stretch in a different way with the lower, more neutral spine here, or the flexed forward spine here. Yay. Anyway, also you have to be careful because swimmers like me and lifeguard Grant, if we stay in pigeon for too long, our feet will go numb. And the bent leg. Now for the double pigeon. Well, the thing with sitting upright with people is when they're in this cross-legged position, the tendency is to go here with the low back rounded, or here still with the low back rounded, and they're kind of like slumped forward here. This is all curled and released, and the sitting up tall with the shoulders and pelvis stacked and both neutral is trying for us, and it feels like our hip flexors here are like holding us up, telling right there. So it's challenging to let all this calm down and relax and still hold one's self upright. But the reason of practicing the pigeon on the ground in the neutral spine, and then thinking about how you are sitting with a neutral pelvis, even with the legs folded or extended. If you're me, I can lengthen my legs fully out, and now I'm in a neutral spine. Well, can you go here? No, because now my low back is rounded. All this just tightens. I don't know how to release it at the same time. Definitely thinking about releasing. If I bend my knees, now I'm in a more neutral pelvis and spine orientation. Well, can you press through your heels and lengthen your legs out? No. I mean, sort of, but no. It's a work in progress. And yes, I stretch my hamstrings. A buckload all the time in lots of different ways. So, okay, but now we've addressed the goal is to be sitting upright with a neutral spine, shoulders, rib cage, neutral over pelvis, natural curves of spine and back all present in different directions. Then we have neutral hips and the least amount of hip tension as possible, which isn't necessarily saying much. As far as the fire logs pose, so first you have your lotus and half lotus. So a half lotus would be to take one foot into the hip crease here, and then from the side profile I feel kind of curled, so I gotta lift and sort of set myself back down, and then position my shoulders over my hips And then let all this kind of calm down. Now, if you are extra flexy, and I actually think this has more to do with the flexibility of my ankles and not my hips, you can take the other one and thread it in. And again, I feel a little bit kind of dumped backwards, so I have to do a little bit of shifting around. Actually, I think that's as good as it's going to get. All right, is it perfect? No. It's a work in progress, and there's a lot of pressure here on my ankles and shins because my body is very not symmetrical. But obviously, if I would only try yoga, I would figure that out. Anyway, so here's your full lotus. Again, the half lotus would be just one foot tucked into the hip crease. It's a dog. Well, did you want to be on TV and you brought me a rock? Oh, fabulous. So, fire logs would be, pretend you're a rubber band, and you can stack your legs like this directly on top of each other. So, first of all, I'm going to flex through my ankle and try to shoot for some square angles, and I'm already rocking to the side of my hip, so I really want to try and not do that. The other one gets to flex and come here, foot stacked on top of, not the joint exactly, but just above. So it should be just on one bone, not on a vulnerable part. Do you want to blow out your knee? Put all the pressure on the side of your knee. Okay, so from the side profile, same business here with the hips, although actually this is a little bit easier for me to sit upright. But as you can see, what's going on here? Well, this hip cannot release. Cool. I'll just wait here patiently. You can put sandbags. You can use, much like we did reclining, that skeletal muscular activation of, and I'm really pressing and holding myself upright, but also sometimes it's nice to just be able to live in a relaxed posture as well. So I can hang out here repeatedly for short bursts, and my body will learn that this is an okay place to live. I've been a yoga instructor since 2015, so I'll let you know when that happens. We can also take something soft or firm. This was just a nearby object. It's Baymax. How would you rate your pain? He can be positioned as support, but it's really not support. It is tricking your body into thinking that, like, oh, this is okay, I'm supported here, now I can really release. So we'll hang out here for a couple of minutes. It depends on what type of yoga that you're doing. So like a yin yoga might be 10 to 15 breaths, which is you take 12 breaths ish every minute. So it's around a minute, 2 minutes, depending upon how you're breathing. If you're doing Iyengar yoga, you might be here for 5 minutes. But Iyengar yoga is going to be significantly more focused on like Stott Pilates postural alignment principles. Yay. Yin yoga is going to be more interested in stretching the joints themselves. So in your joint and the things which you stretch, you've got, the muscle that you stretch, and then you have the attachments of the muscles to the bones themselves, and then you have your fascia that encases everything in your body ever, and then you have your nerves, and you stretch all of those components sometimes simultaneously, but also in different ways. So we can further go over that in hamstring stretching, should anyone be so fascinated. Although usually it's only me that's interested in hamstrings. But anyway, so this is my fire logs, or an upright double pigeon, depending upon who you're asking. and what English names they like to use for totally non-English stuff. You'll notice that I haven't unflexed this foot, and that is because I personally am a little concerned that my body has learned neuromuscularly that this ankle should live here. So even though this is supported by the floor, I don't want to necessarily teach it to go here. So when I'm actively practicing a stretch, I want, at least me, I want to neuromuscularly teach it that that is where we live. So if I did it on the other side, and I'm shifting because I want to have the sensation that I am like I would if I sat upright in a chair. I want that shape in my back and in my hips as far as what part of my hip I am sitting on, because when we say our hips, I'm sitting more or less on top of my ischial tuberosities. But what does that mean to regular people? It's like your butt bones, but there aren't really butt bones that exist, but like that's what I'm sitting on, and it's really the back of your thigh, because your butt, like the squishy part, is like glutes and stuff, but you don't really sit on that. It's kind of behind you when you actually sit down. It's just like a small part that you sit on. Okay, and you can see that this hip is kind of the same, and I can see a little bit of this foot, how it likes to live there even when I'm still flexing, like it needs to be pushing on to something, and that actually changes here. But maybe I should try yoga. Do you know, I bet if I had somebody teaching me about stretching and like neuromuscular programming, maybe I would be better. So my point in all of this is, hey, you had been curious about how do you do both of the legs at the same time in the double pigeon for fire logs. There it is. And also twofold in that I don't think education on stretching, at least for pigeon, is necessarily the hip issue for yours truly, although I am always curious about new ways of stretching, because most of us, for example, like to stretch hamstrings by the I can touch my toes shape, with the legs fully extended and the hip weight back, and it's not that there's anything wrong with that, but you get a different stretch in said hamstrings and nerves and stuff if you shift the body weight forward. You also get a different stretch if you bend the knees and take the chest to the thighs and keep the body weight centered in the same position and think about lengthening the legs and keeping the chest into the thighs and thinking of lifting here up and back, and you'll see that I can't do it. I need to make space here, but theoretically people go here smooshed and lengthen the legs all the time. So for me, it's a nice opportunity to look for, okay, so I'm here and I can't lengthen out despite giving it a go. Let me see if I can slowly teach my body to do that by hanging here and relaxing as best I can for a few breaths, not forever. And then I'll do small controlled pulses. So nobody ever bounces in fitness. It's back off a little bit and then go to 75, maybe 80% as far as trying to do the thing, because we never want to go full tilt. That's how accidents and injuries happen. And then I can bend, and then I can inhale into the stretch, and then bend, and then inhale, and then bend, and then inhale, and then bend, and then I'm probably done, because we don't want to do too much stretching at a time. It teaches our body that it's mad because it hasn't used that elasticity in that area for a while or ever, and it needs to be rehydrated by you drinking actual water and resting, etc. So the whole point is I got it on health and fitness and shit. It's just a matter of, it turns out we can't spend our whole life doing nothing but, like, you know, stretching and training and stuff, especially when, like, we already dedicate a fairly decent portion to just that. Okay, and internet rant. But for real though, now we've gone over how there are different approaches to stretches. The same actually could be done for half monkey pose, now that I think about it, which here is your half monkey where it's like, oh, the runner stretch. It's a half monkey. So I have lots of ways I can start. I can keep chest and thigh glued, lengthen back, and you'll notice I can't lengthen back anymore in the hamstring. Okay, that's information. I can do that same thing with the foot flexed. I can make some space and lengthen out with the leg, or similarly go here with foot lifted. So, and then of course this also changes if you release up and then hinge down. At any rate, now we've gone over a few hamstring stretches and a few hip and piriformis stretches. Yay! Ta-da!